There's no such thing as bad press, so the saying goes. I'm Jamie Gorman, host of Be Better at Business TV, and I'm here this morning with Asha Sedalia Bruot of Asha Public Relations, and we're going to explore that saying, and then we're also going to discuss how public relations can help you be better at business. Good morning, Asha.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. Well, Asha, we talked a little bit about public relations in general. What are 3 or 4 specific tips and techniques that you might recommend to a small business owner who's looking to start building up their public relations?
Well, there's 3 things I would definitely suggest.
Okay.
One is make sure you have the manpower or the resources to support that PR.
Okay.
Meaning someone will be dedicated to being proactive and getting any sort of news releases out and managing the press. Number 2 is, do you have the financial commitment to back up a long-term PR campaign?
Right.
I do not believe PR is something you do on the side. I believe if you're going to invest in PR, you have that PR person part of your management meetings working side by side with the president and or CEO,
Right.
making those decisions. And number 3 is make sure you have the content.
Okay.
I mean, last but certainly not least, make sure you have the content.
Right.
Many times people get excited about PR, but they don't have the content.
Right.
They don't have the newsworthy information. And really, if you can't answer the question, who cares,
That's
it's
a big
probably
one.
not a story.
That's a big one. So first thing you got to do is have a story before you talk about
Sure.
it, right? But
Sure.
you help people kind of come up and look at their business and say, well, hey, because there's a lot of business, they're giving back to community, and they're like, well, we just don't have anything happen. And I'm assuming you can kind of come in and say, okay, what else is going on, and keep asking that question. And there's probably things that pop up that they just didn't even think about because it's normal for them. But you kind of see it as, hey, this is something that
Sure.
can go.
Sure, I like to come into a group, and a lot of times because, again, they're doing it every day, my perspective is completely fresh. I'm
Right.
not operationally involved in what their specific industry is, but I know what my industry is. So
Right.
I know the questions to ask. I know to go a little bit deeper into maybe something on the service that doesn't look like a story, but it actually is.
Okay, great. So let's go back to the first point, which the first point was making sure you have the resources to do it, which is kind of common in a lot of marketing, but probably especially so in public relations because you're counting so much kind of on an internal people to help be thinking about the stories and sitting in
Right.
those meetings and those types of things. So how can a small business address that? What kind of time does it take?
Well, it really depends, again, on what sort of story
Okay.
opportunities they have. There are some companies that I think have such ongoing opportunity and content that they easily could spend 20 hours a month on PR,
Right.
if not more. Again, that's such a broad question. There's
Right.
other companies that maybe only have 10 hours worth of work or 5 hours worth of work.
Okay.
Certainly that would be an extremely small account.
Right.
If you're dealing with large companies, again, they have very big retainers. And again, PR is something where you're always looking ahead. So even if you're not dealing with the day-to-day PR maintenance of maybe doing some, PR can be internal promotions as well
Right.
with your employees.
Okay, yeah, absolutely.
So we're not just looking at the external audience. But again, you're always 4, 6, 9 weeks ahead of the game.
Okay.
Looking ahead, where are opportunities?
Right.
Making sure that if there is a chance with the media to have a story that would be a fit with us, why aren't we part of that? We need
Okay.
to be part of that.
So-
Many times people miss PR opportunities just because they miss the deadlines.
So that might be the first resource, is just identifying somebody in your company that can help identify here's the things that are press worthy, and then maybe you
Correct.
bring somebody else in to write the press release, but just somebody else realizing that and knowing what types of things can be done.
And surely there's a science to writing press releases.
Yes,
I know
absolutely.
we talk about that as just sending out a press release, but there certainly is a science to it. There is a way to write it that's more effective.
Right.
Having the who, what, where, when, making sure there's a strong lead to it.
Yes.
You're competing with so many other people who are providing news to a reporter, and reporters are going through so much content every day trying to fill either a newscast or their newspaper. So
Right.
again, making sure you have strong leads, strong angles, written simply with the key content.
Yes.
This is not an exercise in creative writing.
Yes. Keeping it short and to the point, I'm sure
Short
they
and simple.
appreciate that.
Yes.
That's great. And then you mentioned budget, having the budget and making sure that you're committed to kind of the long term. And you mentioned that this is a strategic type thing. It happens over time. So it's not something where you send out one press release and, hey, you got people knocking down your door. It is long term. What kind of budget, this probably depends, but for a 5-6 person business, what kind of budget should they be looking at from a press release or from a public relations perspective?
I think at least if you can commit to $1,000 a month
Okay.
to start,
Okay.
I think you should start looking at that. And again, to see how committed you are
Right.
to investing in it. It's really hard to evaluate public relations within a 2 to 3 month
Yes.
time period where people say, well, what can you do for me in 2 to
Right.
3 months? Well, sometimes we might be lucky. Maybe we can get you a couple of great news coverage within those couple of months. But again, I say, if I get someone who happens to go on Fox 5 Morning News, which would be wonderful, if you do that in January and no one hears about you until June, how effective was that?
Right.
So I really look at public relations as a form of building blocks.
Yes.
You lay your foundation and you continue to build on it. And that's where the awareness comes in. And that's where you're able to make sure that you're being kept top of mind in the public.
That's great, and that's true with a lot of different marketing. A lot of people will get in and they'll do one advertisement in the newspaper, they'll do, a couple social media posts, or they'll do one electronic email, email marketing, or one direct mail, and they'll just expect a lot from that. But it really is, marketing's a long-term thing in general to kind of keep going. It's something you got to face every day,
And I agree, and I think that, think about it again in the terms of word of mouth as well. I've been in situations where I've worked with a client locally, and I was in my neighborhood waiting with my children on the school bus, and I heard some of the neighbors talking about how they keep seeing this person in this company in the paper all the time. They can't believe they're in the paper all the time. And so this is causing some conversation, and they didn't realize it was a client of mine. So as we're talking, I'm thinking in the back of my head, this is really what public relations is about, creating conversation.
Yeah.
And for them, it made it feel like, wow, they're important.
Right.
They must be doing something
Yes.
that's significant to us, because every time we open up the paper, they're in there for something.
So did you tell them that was a client?
I actually ended up telling them at the end, and we laughed about it.
That's great.
But it's a great compliment to me to know that that's really one of the goals of PR, is to get that chatter going, and hopefully it's good chatter.
Right.
Right? Because we certainly know, because I do believe there's bad press,
Right.
that the chatter could be negative.
Right. And so sometimes knowing what people are talking bad about is one of your opportunities where you need to come in and do some
Absolutely.
public relations to kind of change that attitude.
I agree.
That's great. So, Alyssa, do we have any questions from our audience?
Who should I send press releases to, and how do I get their information?
Yeah, so even, you write a decent press release or you have a story, how do you go about trying to get that information out? And then I know that bringing in somebody like you adds a lot to that as
Sure.
well. So how do you approach that?
Well, number one, once you have your press release and you realize, okay, I've written it properly, I know I want to send it out, I know I have a good story, find out who you need to send it to by targeting whatever publications or whatever television program you're
Okay.
looking at. So start reading what they're writing about.
All right.
Okay, you get a sense of what kind of content they're looking for. And then you'll go ahead and figure out, okay, well, that reporter's writing about that. So a lot of times you can go to media outlets' websites, and they will have contact information about those specific reporters.
Okay.
If that's not the case, a lot of times you can call directly to the media outlet and ask for information regarding that reporters and ask for an email address. But certainly don't call them when they're on deadline or toward the end of the day. You won't get a very good response. And lastly, truly, and this isn't just a plug for me, but truly I believe with public relations, the reason we have professional PR practitioners out
Right.
there is because those relationships have already been built,
Right.
and we've sourced out what reporters are covering what industries, and we're able to streamline that process and make it much more effective.
Yeah. And I think making those contacts, because you're talking to these people on a daily basis. If I'm a small business owner, I may have a story once a month,
Right.
and then I'm trying to go in and get it. That's tough to build a relationship when you're not doing that. But
Right.
I'm assuming that with your media contacts, they know when Asha's bringing me something, I really need to look at that because she's already filtered it for me and knows
Sure.
that it's something I can use.
Right, and building that reputation and that relationship with the media helps the client, because that PR practitioner has already been able to establish that sort of
Right.
trust.
Good.
And again, because reporters are going through so much information, and sometimes they're moving so quickly, that they really have to be able to quickly source, okay, I know that's good content, let's move, let's get the interview. And that's why it's so important when we do media training and we talk to clients to make sure that you're so timely when you get back to media.
Right. Great. Well, we've talked a lot about public relations, but is there anything more specific you'd like to share about Asha Public Relations specifically?
We are a public relations firm that specializes in customized PR planning.
Okay.
And we're very strategic in business planning as well as putting story planning together, and we're very aggressive with media relations.
Okay, great.
So,
Thank you. Well, thanks for joining us.
thank you.
Thank you for joining us here on Be Better at Business TV. I'm Jamie Gorman, host of Be Better at Business TV, and if you found this content useful, I encourage you to share it with your colleagues, share it with your clients, share it with your friends. But most of all, use this content, go out and be better at business.